Prepare for a fusion of knowledge and exhilaration where education and excitement collide.
Taking you on an adventure that expands your mind and speaks to your spirit.
I'm Master Nick.
I'm Lady D.
We are the Dom Life.
This podcast contains sexually explicit topics and adult content.
It is intended for listeners 18 and older.
The opinions expressed in this podcast are ours alone, based on our personal thoughts, feelings, and experiences.
We understand that others may have different opinions and experiences, and we respect that. We would love to hear from you. You can reach out to us at www.thedomlife.com. All right, welcome back. Here we are again for another episode. We are continuing our contract negotiations talk.
Yes, sir.
So last week we revealed what our contract has in it.
Completely read it out loud.
Everything was read. That was written a little over 5 years ago, and we are coming up pretty soon on renegotiating our contract.
But that takes time.
That takes time. So we are going to take this episode and we are going to discuss, for you listening and for you watching on YouTube, what goes into a contract.
Yep. General contract information.
Yep. Now, everybody's contract is a little different.
Right. And we are not the experts.
We are not. We do what works for us and what works for our relationship. And what we do may not be ideal for you. So we've taken several ideas and combined them into this episode to kind of give you an idea of what to expect, what to think of, what to go to the table for negotiations with. So let's get into it. What is a contract? A contract, in my opinion, is a written agreement between all parties involved.
Yes. And in this instance, we're detailing expectations that are in a DS relationship.
Exactly. So ours is based on DS, dominant, submissive. You do have master slaves. You have all different sorts of contracts that you can do depending on your relationship, your lifestyle, and what you're looking to get out of it. So ours, again, is based on a DS relationship.
Yes.
So the next question is, why do we have a contract? Well, to me, a contract lays out all expectations.
Yes, sir.
It lays out all rules, and it takes away the gray area to where nothing should be misinterpreted, nothing should be misread. Everything is there, black and white. Both of you agree on it and sign it.
Now, there's times when that doesn't actually work, where there's areas that pop up during the contract.
Absolutely.
But overall, we have a contract because we want everything to be outlined.
Yes.
And we can refer to our contract when things are slipping a little bit.
Exactly.
It lays out the reasonable expectations in our relationship.
Right. And you're not going to get everything down the first time. If this is your first go round, obviously you heard our first go round. And surprisingly enough, I mean, I think we done rather good on ours.
We did.
Considering that was our first contract ever. Considering I was brand new to BDSM and dominant submissive relationship all the way around.
And it was my first contract.
It was your first contract, yep. And I think we done pretty well at spelling out what we wanted, what we needed out of it. 5 years in, it is time to reevaluate, relook. Is what still important to me that important, or is there something else? So absolutely look into it yourself. Bring to the table what you want and sit down and be ready to negotiate it.
So how do we research a contract? How did you research our initial contract?
Well, for me, thank God there was Google.
Yes.
If this had happened 20 years ago, I honestly don't know what I would have done. But lucky enough, we was in the age of internet, Wi-Fi, smartphones, computers,
Yes, sir.
and Google. Now, I am here to tell you, you can Google BDSM contracts, and you are going to get hundreds of examples. You can get templates. There is all kinds of information out there. And that is how I came up with what I wanted out of the contract. Now, I did not take what I read and put it in a contract. I read several ideas, and I found a way to take those ideas and make it for me.
Yes, sir.
So I would, one of the things that I read was, have your submissive check in with you from time to time. Well, for me, it was, to know when you was leaving your office or when you was leaving your house, so
Not just check in.
not
Now
just
you
checking
wanted,
in.
right.
So you read all of this, you can search it, you can Google it. All kinds of information is out there. Read through it, read several lines, and then stop and think, does any of this relate to me? Do I want any of this in my contract? And then write it in your own words, the way that you want it done. And that is how I came up with my original ideas.
As we renegotiate this, what I've realized is a second option is to talk to your community.
Absolutely.
And so I went to a friend or two and asked information about their previous contracts, their contracts, just in general, because I was trying to make sure if I'm going to put in expectations for you, that are actually my expectations in terms of how to address things or how we're going to work things. I wanted to make sure that that wasn't out of the norm. And I didn't Google at all.
Okay.
So I did mine based on my needs. Maybe at the time I did the last time, but this time I haven't. I've been working on it with already. I think we're two pretty smart people, and I think Google is a big help, but I also think that we can come up with things that we need within our relationship 5 years in that either we've dropped, we've failed, we've excelled at. So let's adjust those things that we dropped or failed. The things we excelled at, let's keep it in because it worked in our general relationship.
And that is a great thing to have as your community. Looking back on it 5 years ago, we had no community.
Yes.
We didn't know anybody in it. We didn't know anybody in the lifestyle, any BDSM. I mean, you have probably friends from Chicago or something that knew something about it. But I had nobody. I didn't have anybody to talk to. So, Google was definitely a big help.
Okay. And then who should be in the contract?
Anybody that is a part of your relationship. It may be you and your partner. You may be boyfriend, girlfriend. You may be married. If you're in a poly relationship, it would be a good idea to have all members to be a part of this, or if you exclude them out of it, then to keep it between you two. But you have to keep in mind that you want time with those partners. So if they're not in the contract, if they're not in it, you have to make sure in your contract that you spell out that, there is still time to be with these people.
So I recognize that some contracts are just for the submissive. Like some people decide that they want their submissive to behave certain ways, and they write those expectations up, and that's it.
Right.
Our world is a partnership, and so we have yours as well because we need to, it's my rules, like you give me rules, I give you my expectations, what I would hope that you would do in this different situations.
Yep, absolutely.
And I wonder, it's interesting, I wonder if Bear will do a contract for each or a contract together when he gets to
Right.
that point.
Yep.
You know, it's like,
we'll have to make sure and keep in touch with him, which we do. You know, we see him, we talk to him.
I'm still waiting.
You're still
He's
waiting.
got it.
You've got
It's
he's got
made.
your flogger. So yeah, we definitely got to see him to get that. But yes, that would be interesting to see how that plays out. And even with, you know, like Milady K, who's been in poly relationships before, you know, to see what her next step and where she's going to go and see how all that plays out.
Because I know that there are like some professional doms that do contracts as well.
Yes.
But you're contracting with somebody for a limited time.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
it basically needs to be written based upon your type of interaction, right?
Yep.
So if you're in a relationship, BDSM interactions only.
Right. And it can be written for that. There is some DOMs out there that, like you've mentioned before, don't want a relationship. They only want to see this person for BDSM activities or scenes. And so therefore that contract more than likely will be the DOM giving the submissive rules. There may not be any
You can't
expectations.
just text me every night and you can't.
Right. So, you know, there would be certain criteria, certain stuff, limited time. This is the time you know, that we will do this. So all of that needs to be tied in. But again, if you're in a relationship, whether it be with one person or multiple people, depending on your situation, depends on who all gets involved in that contract.
So one of the things that came up during this that we started talking about that you stressed very hard
Right.
was it needs to be judgment free.
Absolutely. And that goes back to, so if you are getting ready to negotiate a contract and there is any kind of gut feeling that you cannot speak freely about your wants and your needs in fear of being judged, I'm going to say you need to question
whether
that contract negotiation,
the relationship, the person that you're with.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
When you start to enter into a contract, it has to be what you want. It has to be what you need. You have to get out of it what you're needing.
Yes.
And if you are scared to talk about what you really need or what you really want, to me, that is a red flag of maybe we're going too fast in this relationship.
Yes, sir.
Maybe we need to slow down. Maybe we need to split up, whatever is.
If you're not comfortable talking about each and every section that goes into your contract,
Yep.
whether it is to meet the dom's need, the submissive needs, the slave needs, whatever it is, if you're not comfortable talking about each and every section, even if there's some contention, you know, some tightness or frustration, if you're not comfortable talking through that, then there's a red flag.
You've got a problem because we've said it before, BDSM is built on the foundation of communication and trust. If you can't communicate or if you don't have the trust, your foundation is not there yet. It takes time to build that trust. So although ours moved very quickly, it was a rather different dynamic than what most people experience when they first meet someone.
We're also a lot later in life too.
We are.
And I mean in general. So if I'm doing this in my 20s, I'm going to react and think differently, I think, than I did
but
when we did it.
But the good thing about when we met, and I've said it before, I'm going to say it right now, you knew exactly what your needs were. You knew exactly what you wanted. You knew exactly how you wanted to be treated. You knew exactly how you wanted to be handled. You was absolutely perfectly crystal clear in your communication of how you wanted me to act. You know, when we first met, I didn't think of myself as a dominant person. I kind of felt like I was back in a corner. You know, nobody wanted me. I wasn't good enough, all of this stuff. And one of your words was, you have to be confident in yourself. And that, you know, that's what's got me to where I'm at is, okay, this is how she wants me to be. This is her expectations of me. This is how I need to be.
And then if you do it long enough, it becomes who you are.
It does. But that was the perfect scenario for us. Again, you knew everything that you wanted, and you was flat out blunt and clear about it. If I can't have this, this, and this,
I see this a lot on social media where people ask when they should discuss it. And obviously it's different with everybody. But if it is important to you, like it was to me, then you got to do it right at the beginning. Don't expect to get into a wonderful relationship and then change that person. If you're upfront about it, now that person gets to make an educated decision on whether they want to move forward or not. So it was the very first night.
And again, you set the bar here, and then I had the decision to make, can I reach that bar, or am I going to fail and this is going to go nowhere? So you set my expectations the very first night.
So what should be in the contract?
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, we're going to go through all the pieces and parts of what goes into it. And again, it's individual.
Yeah, it's individual. You can lay it out how you want, the format, the layout. There's templates. Every contract looks different. I've looked at several for the last week just to make sure that we wasn't forgetting something, or to talk about stuff that's not in ours, to kind of give a full. So every one of them I looked at was different. But the first thing you need for a contract, you want to know your needs.
Not your wants.
Needs. No, not your wants. Your needs. What are the things that you need out of this relationship? And when you go to negotiate this contract, there's where the debate starts. If you have a need, you have to have this. There's no second options. You have to make it very clear that this is your needs, and your partner has to accept that, or your contract pretty much ends right there.
Right. Because you need to have your needs met.
Got to have your needs.
Then there's the wants. So you need to be able to define the difference between what your needs are and what your wants are.
Exactly. Absolutely.
The next part is the preamble, like the beginning. The stuff that you're going to write in there that has no definitive section or whatever. You're basically saying, hey, we're entering into a contract.
Yes.
This contract is being entered in by both of us for the best intentions.
Yep.
Okay. So it's binding, but it's only as good as we decide it's going to be, how much we follow it, what we want. So that's another reason that your contract has to include your wants and your needs, and you need to negotiate it, because if the contract does not meet your needs, what good is that contract?
Exactly. What are you going to get out of that relationship?
So the whole beginning is basically a paragraph or two about that you're going into this, why you're going into this, what you expect out of it, and then you start rolling into defining the roles.
Exactly. In this contract, you need to make sure and define who's the dominant, who's the submissive. Is there going to be a possibility of switch? I mean, and that could happen too.
There's a
lot of switch where sometimes he's the dominant, she's the sub, and other times she's the dominant, he's the sub.
I would be interested to see a contract where it covers those eventualities, because it's just not in our dynamic. I can't even think about what a switch contract would look like.
We need to find somebody, unlike Dante and Zora, who's willing to share their contract with us.
I mean, we could do it in broad strokes, right? So how do you cover the areas where you're going to switch? So you're going to take control. Do you define that in the contract?
Right. And just for those of you catching on, yes, this is the second episode of contracts. And yes, Dante, that's the second stab at you. I want to see that contract. There's going to be another episode of contracts, and I bet you I'm going to bring it up then too.
Terrible.
I hope you're listening, Dante.
I know Zora listened, so she'll tell him.
She'll tell him. He probably won't give me a hug the next time he sees me. Also, under defining the roles would be names. What does the submissive want to be called? Maybe the dominant already has a name picked out, and they can negotiate or agree upon that. And what will the dominant be called?
Yes, sir.
Come up with names.
That's how you became Master Nick.
It is. And although, I mean, normally master is used under a master-slave relationship, You picked master for me.
Because I use sir all the
Sir
time.
is used all the time.
And I do call you daddy.
Sometimes, depending on the play.
But yeah, master just fit, and it took you to another level, and I am glad that that became your title as well as your name.
Right. Perfect. Areas of control. So you have to define, what is the Dom taking control of? Is there different parts of your life that you want to be controlled in?
Is it just the bedroom?
Is it just bedroom and sexual? So that has to be defined. And one thing that I did read and I thought made sense, and I can't remember how it was worded, so therefore I can't plagiarize it. But off the top of my head, it's basically in your contract, it's best to put what the dominant can control and leave out the stuff that they cannot control.
Okay.
And reason being for that is anything that you put in there that the dominant can't do, it seems like you're taking away control or the power exchange by doing that. So if you only list what the dominant has control of, that shows the power to the dominant and it shows the control. So just a little side note on that.
There's a lot of that needs to be done where you are, again, affirming that you're my dominant, and I don't want to take any of that away from you, because otherwise you lose your swagger, you lose your the things that make you a dom.
Right. And so, your areas of control, maybe you and your girlfriends or your guy friends have scheduled nights out. Maybe during that night, BDSM or the contract is off limits.
Yes.
So,
when will it be enforced? Like, when is the contract
will it be enforced? Yes, exactly. What do they have control of? You want to define responsibilities. And in that, the submissive...
This is some of the biggest parts of ours.
This is absolutely the biggest parts. Submissives have certain expected behaviors in private, in home, or in public.
Yes.
And that should be spelled out. How do you want your submissive to act when it's just you and your submissive out in public, walking through Walmart or walking through the mall? What are your expectations of your submissive to act?
The submissive also has to follow these tasks, rules, and expected behaviors. So those need to all be in there.
Absolutely. The responsibility for ownership and or control of the body and the mind.
We had that areas broken up, but we had it in there because that would be like you defining me having to take care of my body to be in a certain shape.
Right.
Me giving up control, like when we're out and you give a hand signal, that's a giving up of my mind. Right. I should not be worried about what people are doing around me, what's going on. My biggest concern should always be what you want.
Right. And also, amongst all this, you got to make sure the Dom is assuming control for well-being. You definitely don't want to give up your control of your body and your mind to somebody that you are worried is going to misuse it. Or, if I was to give you the hand signal to strip naked and we're out in public on Main Street in a certain town, that would be bad.
There was recently some stuff like that on national television.
Oh, really? I somehow missed that. But yeah, so the Dom has to assume the responsibility of taking this control, but also using, the Dom's best judgment and knowing when and where to perform these activities.
Your job is to keep us safe.
Yes.
So if it's in a situation where I'm going to get arrested, you shouldn't do it.
Exactly. Also, task. You should have task in there, and your task can be spelled out as, daily task. Are they weekly task, monthly? Does it happen under certain events? If you have guests over,
you expect
this task to be done when they leave, or when the guests are here. You could have certain tasks. You can do tasks on just about anything. One of our tasks is you write a note every morning to put in my lunchbox. So that is a daily thing of every day that I work. You don't do it on the weekends or on vacation days or holidays, but on any day that I work, one of your tasks is you are required to write me a note. So, I mean, it could be task for on a Wednesday. This is what you do. Be creative, set your own schedules on how it should be done.
Chores and other in-home responsibilities. Yep. That's a big one. Not just for me, because I've heard other submissives that I'm friends with talk about it.
All right, y'all gotta quit giving her ideas. I know some of you listen to this. Quit giving her ideas about that. I'm not good with chores.
Well, and we're defining and redefining the stuff that we have in ours, and we've had things in there that have failed or that I'm obviously, based on the last episode, a little bit snarky about. So I'm hoping we can work through some of those.
We do. We got to get through that. And when you sit and think about it, there's times I'm sitting while you're doing chores. There's times you're sitting while I'm doing chores or work or something.
You don't have chores.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Garbage
is one of my chores.
And then you have responsibilities.
I have responsibilities of what I've got to do. But not saying that it equals out, but sometimes it does seem unfair that maybe I'm setting more because during the winter there's more stuff going on inside the house than there is outside the house. And then when we can get outside the house, you're usually out there with me helping, depending on what it is. So, and it is. You got to split it up. You've got to share it, especially this day and time. We both work.
I was just thinking that. It's because we're in a different world.
If you was
it's our household.
Right. If you was a stay-at-home mom, and tending to kids, I understand, is a full-time job in its own. Being a stay-at-home mom or being a stay-at-home dad, if you are taking care of kids in the house all the time. I get that. But during that time, it could be a little different. Again, whatever works for your relationship and how you want to do it, it shouldn't be one-sided. It shouldn't be one person doing all the work if both parties work. I agree 100% with splitting things up.
How much control you give up?
Yes. You need to know that. How much are you willing to give up? When we first met, you originally said it was sexual.
Yes.
And then once we got into the relationship and we started to write our first contract, you was willing to give up more. Now, I may or may not have taken control of everything that you was wanting to give up. And that's why I'm excited to sit down and renegotiate. I want to see where your mind's at now, what you are willing to give control back up in this second go round, and take it from there and try to strive and excel at it.
It's also another place under these responsibilities is how much leadership or development do I require?
Right.
So as you being my dom, I could say, I'm having a very hard time with this.
Yep.
Let's put it in our contract, and that way you can ensure that I get through my desired schooling or my desired exercise, or, hey, I want to learn something and I haven't been doing a good job, so making me read every night or whatever it may be.
You want to include when and how to communicate issues in appropriate ways.
I like that word, appropriate, because I'm very good at the inappropriate ways.
You are. I was going to see where you was going. I was sitting here thinking, where is she going with this? But yes, inappropriate ways. There is the perfect time and place to do this. There is also the not so perfect time and place to do this. And that is something that you all need to sit down and figure out. If one of you has an issue, how is the best way for that person to do it? Not only the submissive. The submissive's going to have issues, but also the dominant's going to have issues. And what is the best way to handle that, to take care of that, and to keep things going smoothly, to keep from getting into an argument and possibly ending your contract?
We've actually included some of those things in our contract.
Yes, you have.
That was the bringing you the collar.
Which you've never done.
You keep saying that. I'm going to.
I'll hold my breath.
Me asking that when you are correcting a behavior and I'm under a lot of duress, make sure just pull me into your lap. Let's do it that way. Settle me out a little bit.
Right. And then, the other one, asking permission.
I always ask permission.
No, let's rephrase that. You always speak. I don't know once that you have said, sir or master, may I tell you what's on my mind? I don't think that's ever happened.
I don't know why that made it into our contract.
And it's not leaving because I honestly forgot the ask permission part was in there. So now that I know it's in there, I'm going to keep it in there and I'm going to hold you to
We're negotiating it.
Yes, we are.
So one of my needs is to be able to speak freely.
Denied. We're going to have to debate that one. All right. Explain when parties are available and or possible limitations to the contract and time of enforcement.
We kind of covered that a little bit, but...
Right. Yeah, I kind of jumped ahead a little bit more, but that thought was in my head. So what we're pertaining to there is if you, and it could be either way, but if you don't live in a relationship where you live together, is there certain times that the dominant can be a dominant, and is there certain times that the submissive can be a submissive? Maybe the submissive or the dominant goes to gym Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays and is there for 2 or 3 hours. Well, in that 2 or 3 hours, don't bother me with any BDSM. I'm doing this. I've heard it said it may or may not bother me. I know I don't have to worry about it, but maybe both of you are uncomfortable if the woman is menstruating.
Right.
And if that's the case, put in the contract during this certain time of month.
Or that the female is very emotional.
Maybe they're emotional. Maybe they're taking a series of shots. And, we know allergy shots. There's several different shots and series of shots that you take. Maybe they don't feel the best for a day or two after those shots.
Well, some of the limitations could also be because a person has a family and a life that is not involved in the BDSM. Right. They have a person that is their submissive or their dominant in the BDSM world, right. And their partner allows that. Right. But when they're at home, they can't do tasks and requirements and Correct. Stuff like that. So it would only be when you guys are in person right. that it would be possible.
But that is something definitely to think about is, are you limited on time? Is there certain times that you can't or don't want to? And that is something to bring to the table for negotiations.
Absolutely.
Soft limits, hard limits. Maybe there's emotional triggers with some of them. That is something that definitely needs to be brought. You absolutely need to know your soft limits. You need to know your hard limits. You're not going to know all of them.
Right.
I don't know anybody that could sit here and say, these are all my hard limits. Those will change. What may be a soft limit may turn into a hard limit, or maybe what's a soft limit is no longer a limit at all. Those change, but it is something that you have to think about.
And triggers can happen with you not even realizing it's going to happen.
We've seen it happen multiple times, that triggers.
So, but to the best of your ability,
yes,
you should include those items into the contract because that will set defined limits.
Absolutely.
So especially if one partner enjoys that play when you don't, this way you guys can communicate openly.
Maybe find a way around it.
Yes.
Yep. Safe words.
What? We don't have safe words.
Everybody should have safe words.
No.
Definitely make sure have safe words in your contract. We use the stoplight system. I think we've made that pretty clear. We use green, yellow, red.
We rarely get to red.
We hardly ever get to red. I don't know that I've ever really pushed you to red.
No, but I did say red once.
Yeah, maybe you did. It don't have to be green, yellow, red. It should not be a common word that is used. No is not a good safe word.
No, it's not.
Because can be used in role play. That can be used in CNC. No should not be a safe word. You can use a famous video that I've seen. Their safe word was pineapple juice. Make sure it is known. Make sure it's something different that may or won't be used in any kind of activity.
You can also define your requirements around that safe word. Now,
Yes.
We know that when a safe word is used, like red, everything stops.
Everything stops.
Whatever is happening, it stops.
Yep.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You're taken out of that situation.
Correct.
You're starting the aftercare process. You're done.
Right.
But we have yellow, and yellow is that thing that you're doing right now is pushing me too close to the edge.
Right.
I'm not enjoying it, or I'm starting
Time to change up the implement, change the area, do something different. Or yellow could mean we need to talk real quick. Stop
Right.
what you're doing. Let me tell you what's on my mind. You can also alter your safe words in the contract.
Right.
if
That's
you
what we're
choose.
saying. So we have a friend that,
Dante
yes,
said it on the podcast that in their contract, he can remove the safe word yellow.
because yellow is, I want to talk about it.
Right.
And it is not her safe word. Like, it is one
Right.
that we use in a series, but the safe word is red. And
Yep.
she would have to say red in order to end whatever's going on.
Right.
And she doesn't want to do that. We don't want to do that. Normally, yellow is said in most cases because you want to change it up.
Right.
That's not the way Chris uses it. Usually when Chris says yellow, it's
Fuck
because
me running yellow. That's when
exactly.
that's when you know it's pretty much red.
So you can define those things
Yes.
and expectations within the contract.
Absolutely. Aftercare. If this is your first time, if this is your first experience, you may or may not know what your aftercare needs are. And but it needs to be put in there. If you don't know exactly what you need, you should still spell out aftercare. And maybe in your contract, you says after a scene, the dominant will stay by or will kneel beside or will sit beside or will hold.
Depending on what you normally
Right.
need.
And discuss further aftercare options.
Yes. And again, we hit things that we didn't expect while going to the club that we could now include because there just was no idea of aftercare needs.
Right. Collars and any rules around collars. Collars are very important in a dominant submissive relationship.
Yes.
Some people consider it to be a ceremony when they give a collar to their submissive.
We got to see that.
Some people consider their collar more valuable, more personal than wedding rings. So depending on your relationship will depend on your collars. We know some people that are collared but don't wear a collar.
Right.
They have a bracelet or they have just a regular necklace.
Day collar.
So there is several ways for collars. You take it how you want it, but set the rules on it.
If there's a very specific way you feel about that collar, that it is yours and yours and yours to give, yours to take, then you need to put that information in the contract.
You know, for us, your play collar. You have 100 collars, and you are welcome to wear any collar you want at any time.
As long as I have a collar on.
As long as you have a collar on. When we play, there is one specific collar that we use. And if you don't bring it to me, you don't touch it.
Yes, sir.
I put it on you. I take it off of you.
Yes. Unless I ask.
Unless
sometimes
you ask.
when you're in the middle of something, you'll let me, because I figured it's just a little bit high, which I like during play, but my neck has problems.
Well, and you know, especially when we're at the club and we play, and you are 99% of the time the last person, unless you're in a good mood, you're not dropping too hard, or it hasn't been too much of a push for you. that, you leave it on. We pack up. We say goodbye to everybody. We're driving home. Maybe it's bugging you. Maybe it's probably, and you've asked then, can I take this off? Absolutely take it off, But, that's.
But it's that one is the one collar that
right.
belongs to you.
But also in there, is anybody allowed to touch it? Now, I'm here to tell you, if you walk up to a submissive
I've seen
and they
it.
are wearing a collar, I'm going to tell you, don't touch that damn collar.
Even if they don't have specific rules against it, it's
a sign of, to me, it's a sign of disrespect.
Yeah, well, because it's a sign of ownership.
Right.
That collar is the fact that you're putting it on me shows that I'm yours,
right.
and by somebody else touching it, it's.
Yep. Now, and we have seen it, somebody says, "Ooh, I love that collar. May I look closer, or may I take a closer look?" And that's where you can either say yes, you can, or no, you can't. But maybe you have that in your contract. Nobody is allowed to touch or play or pull or choke you or anything with your collar. Discipline.
No.
And punishments.
Those things aren't needed.
They are needed.
We don't need that.
That is one thing that we
had left completely out pretty much of the contract.
I mean, there was a talk of punishments, that punishments, how they'll be dealt with, how they'll be handled.
Like that you're not going to be angry when you do it. I'm not going
to be angry when I do it, but that is something that we need to vamp up for our renegotiation. We need to dive a little deeper in discipline and punishments and kind of spell some out. And some of those may or may not get talked about. That may be left completely out of our podcast.
We would just say that we have a section on it because there's things in a contract that are very personal.
Yeah.
Our contract that we did such a good job on, I read through it and you read through it, and I said, I'm okay with discussing all of this because we did a good job of keeping it overall general.
Yes.
We were learning and we just wanted some rules and guidelines down. Now, as we move forward, we realize some of the weaker areas, and when we strengthen those, it becomes very personal.
Right.
And some of those may not be.
Yeah. Well, not all of our renegotiated contract will be aired out.
But we can definitely give you sections. Like, here's
there's
what
going
we
to be
talked
certain
about.
There's going to be certain parts where we sit and renegotiate and discuss and debate. I don't know if you all want to hear 40, 45 minutes of us debating back and forth on this, but we will make sure.
There might be a little bit of,
Right. And the last thing that we have that we didn't mention on our last episode while reading that our contract does have a final page, and it's closing document items. It spells out how long the contract is valid for. As long as we remain in a relationship, our contract is valid. If at any time one of us decides we want out of the relationship, the contract immediately voids, gets ripped up and trashed.
Right.
And then there is a place for both of us to sign our names to show that we are committed not only to the contract, but to each other.
And that it's a living document. So we have in there that this document will and can and will be changed.
Yes.
So as needed, we know Dante and Zora have a change order.
Yes, they do. They have a change form request.
Yes. We don't need to go that extreme, but it is a living document that changes on as needed.
Right.
And
but
then
it also, I don't know that it's extreme, but going back to, when to communicate, what better way to bring up that there's an issue. There's no way for either party to get mad. If the submissive goes to the dominant and says, I don't like this rule, how's that dominant going to take it? So
a change order
form.
You know what? It would also make me write it in a way that I'm willing to have you read.
Right.
That we're putting on paper.
Right. You're not confronting that person in fear of how they're going to take it. You're able to write everything down. You're able to clear your mind.
Right.
And to hand it. So, I mean, it makes good sense.
Yes.
I don't know that we're going to have a change form, but it does make sense. I do understand it.
Right. So the only other area that we didn't hit is special circumstances.
Yes.
So things like we didn't have any of it in it because at the time we weren't we were learning, we just started. But BDSM events or lifestyle activities can have its own section, like expectations if we were swingers. When we go, because we go to a swingers club. So if we were intending to swing, we could define what is and isn't allowed. Because you've said in the beginning you didn't want anyone dominating me.
Correct.
But you also recognize that I need somebody that has that little bit of dominant personality in order for me to even want to do anything.
Right.
It's just part of who I am, and I won't be turned on if somebody is goofy and silly and not got that little bit of...
And those things will change as well. I know it's not in our contract, but we've talked about it. Our very first trip to the club, there was a whole lot of, I'd rather you not do this, or I don't want you to do that. And after a few trips to the club and, seeing how well people were, how great and awesome and the crowd was, then it turned, okay, so I'll let you do this. I'm okay with you doing that. Obviously anybody new that we meet, there is always a permission asked, if you want to kiss or if you want to flirt or whatever you want to do. But then as you make these bonds and these friendships, then things really start opening up to where
there's a lot of blanket
there is just
approvals.
A lot of if it's with this person, you don't have to.
But that's not just us, because Zora and Dante,
they did the same thing.
They've done the same thing. Because it was outside of but there are certain people that you interact with on a regular basis that you have more permission and leniency with, because that there's no disrespect ever going on.
Right. Absolutely.
So that would be the only other thing in the contract that needs, if you're part of, when you go to a BDSM event, do you want your submissive asking somebody a rigger to tie them up? Do you want them to just walk away from you and do? So some of those, if you go to the dungeon every month, then you need maybe some expectations around that as well.
Yep,
but absolutely. I think that covers all of the ins and outs
from our perspective.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we missed, even Googling it, even talking to friends.
There was so much more that was laid out. We kind of combined a few things into each category. And again,
do what's right for you.
Exactly. You beat me to it. You didn't ask permission to say that.
Thankfully, we do a podcast, which means I can't always ask permission.
Right. No, but exactly. Do what works best for you. Sit down with your partner. Make sure and iron out definitely your needs.
Needs are the big one.
Have to
Don't just go, well, I'll get them met because we have a contract. No, it needs to be clearly defined in there. And one of the things that when we started saying needs, it reminded me of Jade saying a fetish is something you need versus a kink, which is something you'd like to have. You enjoy having. So,
and everybody's needs are different.
Yeah, you would never have tickle me in the contract.
No, but a contract, the more precise, the more accurate, the more details you put into it, the more clear your relationship becomes, which means the better it will become.
Yes, sir.
All right. Till next time, good night.
Please follow, like, and share our podcast.
Make sure to visit thedomlife.com, where you can find pictures and other details about the Dom Life podcast. And through the Contact Us button, you can ask questions or provide recommendations for future episodes.
We want to explore your kink too.
Be sure to check out upcoming events to see where our adventures are taking us and our photo gallery to where we've been.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you had fun listening and learning with us.
Till next time, keep calm and remember your safe word.
Red, red, red.